Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary.
The year is 3013. The galaxy is scintillating in the mellow light. Two galactic pilgrims seek out vistas in the samurai future to bring forth the unity of the cosmic shaman. Opening the door of the pantheon of mystics, the evil sorcerer wizard powers the engine of science, seeking to forever alter the sacred balance, travelling on effervescent balls of summer fire.
This week, Back to the Future.
In the year 2015, we had flying cars, self-lacing shoes, and... none of the above.
You know, I did try and have my 30-year viewing of today's movie, Back to the Future, in 2015.
Why only tried?
Because my wife shot it down because she didn't think it was appropriate for my 6-year-old daughter at the time because of, the thing we're going to get into on this one, I'm sure. She loves the movie. When I showed her the list of the podcast, I think we'd been in about 25 episodes. She'd only seen like 2 of the movies on the list, right? She's not a sci-fi girl. But she was like, when are you doing Back to the Future? Why haven't you done Back to the Future? Here we are. It's time to do Back to the Future. This is Matt.
This is Luke.
And welcome to our Sci-Fi
Sanctuary. And today we're joined by a very special guest. He is the inventor of podcasts. He's the main one even when he's not the main one. And I guess for listeners of this show, they might know him from Star Calls. It's David Turners.
Hello. Hi, thanks so much for having me on to talk about one of my favourite films. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. When I listened to Star Calls, I kind of got the impression this was the only science fiction film you'd ever seen.
I think you're probably right. Star Calls was me in my 30s watching Star Wars for the first time ever. And I think in the initial couple of podcasts, I was like, well, the only thing I've really got to compare it to is Back to the Future, because that was on a constant loop in my house when I was growing up, whereas Star Wars wasn't anywhere near it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine.
I went to turn my phone onto silent, and instead I turned off my internet.
All right.
That's what it's like, isn't it?
Just don't touch things, man. I warned you about that. When I touch technology, it stops working.
Oh, I went to open the fridge and I accidentally blew the flat up.
Luke here has watched me fail to use a copier at least 20 times.
Yeah, I mean, in your defense, it's in Japanese, so...
Anyway, yeah, I guess we'll talk about how he got into this one. Dave had this being his entry to sci-fi. It's close to mine. I saw it opening night, 1985. One of the first few films I'd seen. We talked a little earlier. I think I got into Star Trek 3 in Return before this. But I guess little Matt was seeing all sci-fi and probably Disney movies. So, and it's, I had it on VHS and memorized it by 1989 when the sequels came out, I'm sure. So that's my association getting into this. It's another DNA ingrained film. We did watch it, of course, to do this podcast, but we didn't really need to.
Yeah, for me, being born in 1990, this film was already everywhere when I was growing up. My granddad had a box set of the 3 tapes, and I used to watch them on repeat. Although in our household, the third one was actually the favourite, because my granddad loves Westerns.
Wow. Okay, so for me, I was 1 when the original came out, but my brother, who is 4 years older than me, was a massive fan of the films. And I one of my earliest memories was, I would have been about 6, I guess. Was the part 3 come out in 90?
Yeah, I think it was 90.
That sounds right.
I remember him and my uncle returning from the cinema and him going nuts about part 3, saying how much he loved it, and I'd never heard of it before. And I think that week I watched the first two on VHS or wherever it was. And I sort of, instantly connected with it. I mean, I was 6 at the time, so I think it was more about the fast car than the than the complexities of the plot. But I instantly fell in love with it. But in my house, number 2 was always the favourite up until I guess I was about 18, 19, and then that sort of started to, the line between part 1 and 2 sort of blurred a little bit, and I think I appreciated those 2 films above the third, but still, the whole trilogy was much loved in our house.
Yeah, just before everything went crazy and everything shut down, I was actually able to see the 3 of them in the theatre a couple months back, and in my head it had always been, 1 and 2 are great, and then it kind of drops off for 3. But when I rewatched them this time, I was like, oh no, 1 and 3 are great films, and 2 is just a bunch of stuff happening.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, if we're talking rewatches, I feel a little bit guilty at the intro of this podcast, because I've got a 6-year-old as well, and we've just stuck in lockdown. I found an unopened Blu-ray collection of all 3 films in one of my drawers, and I was like, sit down, Harry, you're watching this. And we went through all 3 films, and I did appreciate the third film way more than I ever had, because it growing in my house, it was growing up in my house, it was always the third one was really disappointing. It'd still be watched, and we'd still enjoy it to some extent, but we didn't put it anywhere near the level of 1 and 2. But it's really strange going back and looking at that second one, isn't it? Because it is kind of like, this is just weird sketches chucked together, like weird ideas chucked together. I mean, that's not putting the film down. I absolutely adore the second one, and it still challenges for the top spot for me. But it is strange how you could see that this was a bunch of ideas in a conference room that they've rammed together and somehow managed to make it stick. It's really strange going back to these 3 films now.
I think 2 and 3 is the first, at least the first time I can think of when they were like, we are making the sequels like together. Later they did it with Lord of the Rings, or they did all 3 with Lord of the Rings, didn't they? But I remember 2 and 3.
The Matrix or something like that.
Yeah, the big shtick was they were making them together. So there was a 6-month period when 2 had come out and 3 hadn't. And it got kind of mixed reviews, but people sort of understood, okay, this is going somewhere. The cliffhanger at the end of this first one was actually kind of a big deal, because that never happened anymore. Now we get it on Peak TV all the time, but movies did not do that since like the 40s or 50s with the Saturday afternoon marquee things.
Well, number 2 doesn't just end with the cliffhanger, it ends with a literal trailer for number 3.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, it's crazy. It's and it's funny because there's loads of foreshadowing, and even in the short time between filming the 2 and 3, they had things like, wasn't there? There was a photo of Biff, Western Biff. What was his name? Mad Dog.
Yeah.
They had a photo of Mad Dog in Back to the Future 2, but when you actually see him in Back to the Future 3, it looks completely different. So it's kind of, even the short space between the 2 films being put together, they still changed quite a bit by the looks of it. But yeah, one of the little nods towards 3 and 2, which I'd never noticed until recently, is that Doc wears a shirt with like cowboys and all that sort of stuff on it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm looking into it too much, but it does seem like they used that sort of close proximity of the creation of the 2 films in during the filming of the second one. I
think there's even a little line where he says like, "Oh, and I never even got to do my ultimate dream, to visit the Old West."
Yeah, visit the Old West. Yeah, that was in there, definitely. I mean, they were always going to go there. They've been slightly in the past. They've been way into the future. They were always going to go into the Wild West, weren't they?
What? But for today, let's talk about the first film. So, Matt, do you want to take us through the plot?
Yeah, and for the first time, I'm winging it, which I guess if I have to wing it, it's going to be with this film. I wrote it, then I erased it because I'm an idiot. Oops. But let's give it a roll. Off to the races.
Well, I got a girl with a record machine when it comes to rocking. She's a queen. We love to dance on Saturday night. All alone, I can't hold her tight, but she lives in 20 Club Town. The elevator's broken down. So I walk 1, 2, 5, 3, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5 more. Up on the 12th, I start the track. 15th floor, I'm ready to sag. Get to the top, I'm too tired to ride.
Marty McFly is just your typical American teenager. He likes to cut school, he has a cute girlfriend and a best friend, 50 years older than him, Doc Brown, a wacky inventor who likes to do thermonuclear experiments. His newest one is in a DeLorean. Marty meets him at midnight to watch the experiment where he blows up the car and his dog. But it turns out that this DeLorean is a time machine. That's true. Doc Brown has made a time machine out of a DeLorean. Unfortunately, to power it, he needed to swindle a bit of plutonium from some Libyan terrorists. In the middle of the experiment, they show up to assassinate the scientist. Marty escapes in the time machine and ends up back in 1955, the year that Doc Brown originally conceived the time machine. Strolling around this 30-year past, Marty happens to run into both of his parents, Lorraine and George McFly, and manages to interrupt the incident where George and Lorraine first meet and fall in love. You see, now Mom has the hots for her own son. Marty meets a 30-year younger Doc Brown and convinces him that he is in fact from the future. The two begin to scheme how to send Marty back to the future. There's no plutonium around in 1955, so they're going to need something like a bolt of lightning. Fortunately, Marty has information that a bolt of lightning will hit the town's clock tower a week later, and Doc can use that energy to power the DeLorean time machine. In the meantime, though, Marty needs to clean up his own mess and get his parents hooked back together. Marty and his siblings are slowly fading from time. Marty begins to do the work, finding his father George to be a completely low self-esteem dotard. Complications ensue when local town bully and future boss of George McFly, Biff Tannen, begins to throw a wrench into Marty's plans. Marty has a chase through the town with Biff, ending with Biff driving his car into a truckload of manure. Unfortunately, this makes Mom Lorraine fall even more in love with Marty. Marty ends up having to take his own mother to the school dance, but he's got a plan. George will interrupt them when Marty begins to get a little fresh with Mom. And then George will stage a fight, win the heart of Lorraine, and take her to the school dance for them to fall in love and have 3 children. Biff is still completely pissed at Marty, though, rips him out of the car, and has his henchmen throw him in the back trunk of the school band's car. Winging it doesn't... Well, winging it's not always so good. Okay, that's cool. Anyway, Biff begins...
Now you know why I always have so much trouble when I don't bother to write one.
Biff begins to have his way with Lorraine, but is interrupted by George, who is expecting to find Marty. George finally mans up a bit, though, punches Biff square in the face, and wins the heart of sweet Lorraine. The dance almost doesn't go forward, though, as the guitarist breaks his hand trying to get Marty out of the car's boot. Marty steps up to the plate once again, rockin' to Johnny Be Good, so his parents can meet and kiss for the first time. Now it's back to the town square, though, where Doc Brown has been putting the final touches on getting that DeLorean back to the future. Marty tries to warn him about the Libyan terrorists, but Doc will have nothing of knowledge about the future. With the seconds ticking down and the lightning about to strike, Marty manages to catch the lightning, ride the lightning, and just in the nick of time, and ends up back in 1985. For some reason, only giving himself 10 minutes of time to stop Doc Brown from being assassinated, Marty makes it just too late, only to find that Doc has ignored his own advice, put Marty's letter about the future back together, and put on a bulletproof vest for the occasion. Good thing they didn't shoot him in the face. The next morning, Doc is finally going to take his own time machine out to a test drive to the future, blazing out as Marty returns to his own life, finding his parents have finally become wonderful people since Marty has changed past events. Low self-esteem dad finally becoming the science fiction writer he always wished to be, and his mother Lorraine no longer a depressing alcoholic, but a happy yuppie mom, I guess. We'll catch up with them all again in Back to the Future 2, except for the real George McFly, who we will never see again.
I'm gonna tell you it's gonna be bum, 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 bum. You're gonna give your love to me. Bum, 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 bum. I would love you night and day. Bum, 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 bum. You know my love not fade away. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, well, you know my love not fade away. Bum, 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 bum. My love is bigger than a cat.
We usually go with actors first, but the director is definitely worth a note here because it's one of the biggest blockbuster directors ever, but somehow he seems to be like, I don't know, not quite he is A-list, but his name isn't always A-list, which is Robert Zemeckis. He's made like several of the top grossing films ever, but he never quite has the name of executive producer Spielberg here.
Yeah, maybe it's just because he got overshadowed by Spielberg like that. Like, even on, like, the case of the DVD today, it'll say, like, a Spielberg film, and then Zemeckis will be in tiny letters.
Yeah, but later he made what? Like, Forrest Gump is right on the tip of my brain, but he's made some other notable ones.
I didn't even know he did Gump.
Yeah, that's my point. He's a pretty major name that doesn't get bandied around a whole lot. He's made several of the most notable ones. Sorry, now, of course, he made all three Back to the Futures. Forrest Gump, Contact, Castaway. He got into that creepy animation phase where he did Polar Express and Beowulf. He did The Walk a few years ago. Like, I guess that wasn't a giant one, but I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool, so it's on my list. Oh, and that really depressing one with Denzel Washington, Flight. That was one of the.
Gotcha.
That was a real feel bad movie. Yeah. Anyway, the point is he's A-list and just doing bad. Oh, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Let's not forget that one while we're at it. So.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. He's done loads of films, but for some reason I just never see his name attached to any of them.
Yeah, and because Back to the Future, it's like, oh yeah, Spielberg. Well, not really. I mean, yes and no. So.
It makes sense he went on to do Forrest Gump because it kind of uses the same weird putting people into footage thing as Back to the Future.
That's always cool, right? That is always cool. Like even
when
in
it's
film,
done well.
Yeah, of course. But like when you look at the second film, it's done really well there. But that kind of overshadows what the first film did. You know, like I mean, the bit where he returns back to the park, the car park, and he's trying to save Doc is just so well done. Like with the subtle changes here and there, and then seeing himself. It looks great, man. I love that.
I do wonder with the second film with that stuff, if they just released 2 and 3 the other way round, it would be a bit more exciting seeing him go back to the first film.
I don't know. I think they changed enough about it. The bit where he's like watching himself on stage, that is just so
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's just the best.
But it when I saw them like a week apart, it did feel a bit weird, like, I feel like I just watched this film.
Yeah, no, I must admit, when I did my marathon with my son, it was kind of like, oh, they've not actually gone anywhere. Like, this is just like massive bits of the first film. But I hadn't known. I mean, I don't know that director too well, and it's strange that he's not a massive name considering the amount of projects he's tied to. It's that's crazy.
He also sounds like a really good guy. I was reading about the film earlier, and apparently the reason we haven't had any like sequels or remakes is just Zemeckis is like, no, I won't do it without Michael J. Fox, and obviously we're not going to do one without him, so it's done.
I got to go on a quick aside with Castaway, though. I saw Castaway in the theater in Lisbon, Portugal. And the fun with that is we were about to fly back to the States. It was like we got cheap plane tickets for spring break, but we were so cheap we didn't want to get a hotel. So we're like, we'll watch the movie and then we'll just hang around the airport all night. So anyway, the point is we watched Castaway before taking a transatlantic flight. So
were you like packing extra supplies in your briefcase when you were getting on that plane? Just, some firewood and fishing.
No, we got
fishing rod.
We got luckier than that because they had overbooked the plane, so they asked for volunteers to wait for the next one. We said yes, and then they're like, okay, we can get you on this one. You're in first class, so we basically paid about $100 for a first class flight.
Before we move back to the Future, I'll admit it. I'd have opened those packages. Why not? What was he thinking? Just open the packages, mate. I bet there could have been anything lighter in there. That would have helped you out, wouldn't it?
iPad 100%.
Come on.
You always put them back in the box if anyone comes.
Yeah, a bit of sellotape over the top. No one will notice. They turn up in better conditions than half of the delivery services we get round here. So, it would have been all right.
I guess we should get to the actors. That's what we already mentioned Michael J. Fox, whose claim to fame at this point was the sitcom Family Ties.
Yeah, that's right. And he filmed this in between recording episodes of Family Ties, didn't he? If I remember correctly.
Well, yeah, because famously they almost recast him because he couldn't leave the show. But
they did
he
recast
was just so
him, didn't
perfect.
They
did like 2 weeks of filming.
Yeah, they filmed a bunch of it with Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly, and it is so weird. I mean, you hear the stories about how it wasn't working and he didn't get the role right. And I don't know how much of that is hindsight talking or people just... I don't know what the deal is really, but what's bizarre is that obviously there was a lot of footage taken with Eric Stoltz and there's a hell of a lot of like publicity photos with him as Marty on the internet, and you look at them and you just think, this is so weird. Like when you see the photos of Christopher Lloyd standing next to Eric Stoltz, like in that hazmat suit, while Eric is in the sort of body warmer and the jeans and everything, you just think, this is just odd. It's like someone's a really big fan and they photoshopped themselves into the scene or something. It's bizarre. But I can't imagine how difficult that must have been to have cast him, started filming, and then turn around to him and saying, yeah, no, we're finding someone else now. And then for Eric Stoltz to see how massive that film became, what an awkward situation that is.
He's a good actor. I particularly liked him in the TV show Caprica a few years ago, but he's a pretty intense actor where Marty needs to be a little bit kind of laid back. I mean, the goofy teenager, I guess, which is where Michael J. Fox comes in. With Doc Brown and Marty being the Rick and Morty template with Eric Stoltz in the role, it just would have been Rick and Rick or something. So,
well, yeah, one of the quotes was that he played it too dramatic.
Yeah, and this film can't be too dramatic. I mean, when you you mentioned a few points during your run through the plot, but there's so many plot holes in this film that if it was played a little bit straighter than it is, they would have bugged the hell out of you. But because you feel that this is actually more of a family adventure film than a sci-fi flick, you kind of let all that stuff go. I'm talking even down to how the hell Marty and Doc friends. As you said, why didn't he turn up a little bit earlier to save Doc? Why did he leave it like 5 minutes? There's loads of that. So why would you take a picture of a well if the 3 children were not in front of it? That's another one that's always bugged me. You know, all that stuff that usually gets picked apart in sci-fi films, because this doesn't necessarily feel like a sci-fi film. It's more of a, you know, a family adventure film. I think they get away with all that stuff, and I think if they didn't cast those characters correctly, then the focus would have turned a little bit, and as a result, no one really cares about those little things. They sort of laugh them off and then carry on, unlike other sci-fi films where it becomes this massive argument and expression of frustration to talk about those things.
Oh, and similarly as well, like, Marty plays it kind of lighthearted and fun, but there's some really dark shit in this film.
Oh god,
so if you'd played it dramatically, when you've got like Libyan terrorists and someone almost raping your mum and stuff, it would not be a lighthearted family
sexual
adventure.
Assault, there's racism in there. There's like it's crazy. The only thing that I don't quite get about Marty's character, other than him hanging around with a crazy scientist, is I think he's played, like, his character is played as a sort of not a loser at high school, but not exactly one of the popular kids at high school, you know. But he's too cool for that. Like, you just think, why is he not like the hero of his school? Why is he this guy that's getting shouted at and beaten up and all that sort of stuff? Like, it's a bit. That's a bit.
We don't really see him. We don't really see any of his time in 1985 school.
I think we do, don't we? Where's
we see him do his band audition, but that's about it.
We see him in the hallway.
Biff in the thing, yeah, he's in the hallway, and then Strickland comes out and gives him a bollocking, doesn't he? But
oh yeah, but if you're the cool kid, you do get a bollocking from the teacher.
Well, I wouldn't know.
These aren't. I don't know if any of us can claim to be the cool kids. Speaking of the darkness of the original script, sorry, I just brought up. It made me think: wasn't the original script a lot darker? So I found a few quotes here. One saying, in an early script, the time machine was a refrigerator, and Marty would need the power of an atomic explosion at the Nevada test site to return home. Zemeckis was concerned that children would accidentally lock themselves in refrigerators, so that's how that got changed. And then the other one, I just noticed a few lines down from that. They thought that the first finished draft of the script, they thought it was a really nice, cute, warm film, but not sexual enough. Ow.
Okay. Bit odd. With the refrigerator thing, wouldn't that make the opening just really crap? You know, the whole thing about a car driving to them at 88 miles per hour, and you just, like, there's part of you, is it going to work? Because if it doesn't, they're getting hit by a car. And then the flames and everything. Instead, it'd just be like them turning it on at the plug, would it? And then it just disappeared.
Marty goes into the lab and the dog's climbing into a fridge.
No, you'd include some groundhogs at the beginning, and then it'd be fine.
Right. Well, yeah, apparently Spielberg did steal that scene is where he got it for Indiana Jones.
Yeah, he might have wanted double. Actually, you know what? I'm pretty down that film, but the first 20 minutes of that one, I didn't mind. It's after that when it starts to rub me the wrong way. I didn't mind nuking the fridge later. It was later that did it. But I'm glad that Back to the Future decided not to nuke the fridge and give us a DeLorean that shoots fire instead.
DeLorean is very cool.
As good as Marty McFly is in this film, and he is good, I mean, Doc is just the star, right? He's everything in this film. Oh, he certainly was to me when I was growing up, because you first see him, he's strange, he's weird, he talks in a weird way, he's got this very distinct voice, he's erratic, he's excited, he's enthusiastic, he just, every time he's on the screen, he just takes all the attention for me. And I think, other than the car, which I absolutely loved when I was a kid, there was just something about Doc that, I don't know, man. It just, like, that was my first love for a character, I think, in a film. Because every time he was on screen, I was excited about what he was saying, and the way he interacted with Marty. You know, the whole heavy line really sticks out in my head, his reaction to all that sort of stuff. I don't know, not only a fantastically written character, but also the performance was just off the charts. Like it was, yeah. I mean, there's some great performances in these films, but I think that particular one is the best of the bunch.
Well, let's name that with Christopher Lloyd. I think this was one of the first big movies he had done. He had been big on the TV show Taxi before, which is quite funny. Also has Danny DeVito, Andy Kaufman was there. Pretty funny show. So he already definitely had his comedy kudos, and I mean he's been in lots of great stuff. So yeah, Christopher Lloyd's just fantastic.
He's got those perfect crazy eyes, I think is what does it.
Yeah. I'm going to play a little 50s rock and roll, but let's get a little more into Christopher Lloyd and the other actors.
My belief can't be true. Oh, baby, can't be true. You stop back to the fight you used to. That's what made you over the hill. Saw Maybelline in the Cooperville. Cadillac rolled on over the road. Nothing I rode my V8 fold. Cadillac drew about 95. She was bumping, rolled side to side. Maybelline, can't it be true? Wow, Maybelline, can't it be true? You stopped like you fight you used to. Cadillac pulled up head of the phone. Phone got hot and wouldn't moan. Then got cloudy and started lane. I took my home ball past the lane. Rain wall blowed all over my hood. I knew my motor could believe. Can't it be true? Why, baby, can't it be true? You stop back.
We are going on about Christopher Lloyd, but let's dovetail that in a little bit with Doc Brown. I guess this is a case where the actor and the character are like pretty much so entwined. You can't. I don't know the actor, of course, but I just feel like you can barely separate the two because of the manic energy and the crazy eyes.
I think that's true of Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox, and that's why the films work so well.
You say you can't separate the. You say you can't separate the actor and the character, and I think you mentioned Taxi there, but I obviously saw Taxi a lot later, and you don't recognise him straight away, Christopher Lloyd in Taxi, until like when you first see him, you're kind of like, is that kind of recognised? And then the voice and the mannerisms, you're like, it's Doc. Like that's the first thing you think. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not like he's playing himself, obviously, but you can't imagine. Again, it's one of those situations you can't imagine anyone else playing that character. You just can't. There's no one that can do it like that. So it's pretty much the sort of, whatever you see Christopher Lloyd in, or if you ever see him being interviewed or whatever, that is Doc sitting there being interviewed to me, because it's such a strong tie between the actor and the character.
Meanwhile, Thomas F. Wilson would like to be less associated with his character. He plays Biff Tannen, and I think he's complained that people will berate him in public for being Biff sometimes.
Well, have you seen it? He does if you search for him on YouTube, because he did stand-up comedy for a while. I think it was either stand-up comedy or he just did this. There's a video of him on stage singing about how he is not Biff. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. So I definitely recommend going on YouTube and seeking that up.
Yeah.
Is that the same one where he answers all of his frequently asked questions?
That's right. That's what he does. He answers the frequently asked questions. That was doing the rounds a few years ago when, it was quite old back then. But it sort of not leaked, but got shared a lot more. And I saw it then, and I thought it was wonderful.
The line I always remember is, what does a producer do? I don't know.
Yeah. Was it real manure? No. That's a good little video, that.
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy sounded bitchy when he said, I am not Spock, but, Thomas F. Wilson can do a whole stand-up routine on not being Biff, and I will stand by that. The character being fantastic, but yes, you, as an actor, you would want to divorce yourself from that a bit.
Yeah, God, what a horrific bad guy. I mean, across generations, it's just just a nasty, horrible, like nothing but hate villain of the trilogy, really. But in this particular film, he really is just as low as it gets, isn't he?
Well, what's amazing is that he is like really funny and fun and entertaining to watch, but also you really hate him.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, the scene at the end of the film where you see that he is now washing. He's a car cleaner. It's so satisfying because you knew what he was like when he had a bit of power, and you knew what he was like at school, and he was nothing but yeah, as I say, just horrible things about that character. So to see him like suddenly humbled like that was just a perfect ending to that film.
They never throw football on him. I feel like now he'd also have to be like the football star, but he's just he's just there as an a-hole, which is kind of fantastic.
And you'd find out if the film was made now, you'd find out why he was so angry and mean to everyone. And it's just that there was no need for it back then. He's a bad guy. He's just a bad guy, right? He's just a really bad person. Yeah, like, just throughout his whole life.
It's like the Joker and Batman. If anyone who tries to explain the Joker has just ruined the Joker.
Yeah. He's a villain.
Marty's mom is played by Leah Thompson, who was quite a star in the day. I guess it's the case where unfortunately the actor got older and didn't get roles anymore. She was in a lot of 80s movies. She was in Red Dawn, Howard the Duck. She had a TV sitcom in the early 90s. It's kind of wild to think about now. She's good. I like her, but I feel like since the mid-90s, she's kind of just faded into the ether or something.
Have you done a Howard the Duck episode yet?
No, not yet. I don't think I've ever seen it.
I haven't seen it since the 80s.
I probably haven't seen it since I was about 12. But yeah, no, get that done. Do a live watch, record while you're watching it. That's what I want to hear. You just made that happen sooner. Again, she's she's great in it. Her character is not the best in the film, let's say, but it's I mean she played the role perfectly, I think.
Well, between Biff, Lorraine, and George, what's really impressive is how different their young and old performances are.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
Like, between the makeup, the performance, and everything, they really sell, like, two different characters almost.
And the makeup works. Watching on Blu-ray, I did see, like, a little patch of gnarliness on older Doc's neck, but in general, the makeup's quite convincing.
Well, with some of them, like, I wouldn't even believe you if you told me it's the same actor.
Yeah. The other, of course, we talked about Leah Thompson. We've got to talk about Crispin Glover. This is the only Back to the Future he was actually on set for. I think he's in a touch of stock footage in 2, but when he shows up in the future, it's a different actor because Crispin Glover is a strange man. He has also been, if you saw a Hot Tub Time Machine, he's great in that. With the dude missing an arm, and the whole thing there is like, oh my god, is this when he's going to lose his arm when they go back in the past? He's in Alice in Wonderland, although I don't know if we should hold that against him or not. But like, he's not really acting in this film. If you see him in interviews, there's a clip of him on David Letterman show, talk show in America in the 80s, 90s, and later, but he just seems like he's like tripping through the interview. It's like wild.
Yeah, I think he was on Letterman 3 times in total, and Letterman always says that he was one of the hardest guests that he's ever had on the show, and you can see why. You see it. He's just, doesn't he come out one doing like kung fu kicks and stuff? It's really odd.
He's like missing a shoe or something.
Yeah. But no, he's certainly an interesting person, and he has a lot to say about his time with Back to the Future. I know there was a lawsuit involved at one point regarding the second film, but yeah, no, it's he also played it perfectly from the start when he was being the sort of bullied dad to all the way through the film, but he plays it absolutely perfectly. So yeah, no complaints from any of the performances really.
Yeah, I think a lot of the other performances, so the parents, Biff, Doc, are so over the top that you kind of need Marty to be kind of chill and aloof to sort of ground you.
So I'm staring here at something he made in 2005. I haven't seen this, but I think I heard some friends talk about it. They actually went to see him speak. Like, yes, this is it. This is the movie he made, okay? The adventures of a young man with Down syndrome whose principal interests are snails, salt, a pipe, how to get home, and is tormented by hubristic, racist inner psych. That was the movie he made on his own. And I remember they went and he screened it, and it was just like, it stars Crispin Glover and a bunch of people with Down syndrome, which is totally bizarre.
Okay.
But
he is definitely a weird guy, but it works because he plays such a like weird, nerdy, strange guy in this, and you really believe it. Like a lot of the time in films, you have the so-called geek, but they also want him to be lovable. So you just think like, but this guy actually would probably be kind of popular. But George, like, you really believe that he would have had absolutely zero friends at school.
So I guess the only time Crispin Glover's acting is in the final scene when he's a 47-year-old published author.
Yeah, successful guy. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, the way he talks and stutters, and he always looks like he's sweating, especially when Marty's trying to convince him to ask his mum out. But it's I mean, again, just perfectly played.
He looks like he'd smell like milk and cheese, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, definitely.
You can choose which particular flavor of cheese on your own, but you don't want to smell like cheese as the main point. But
even then, like, you know, we talk about the dark themes in this film. Like the scene where he finds out that, you know, the story was that he got hit by a car, you know, and that's how they met. And then when you actually see what happens, and he's up a tree, like staring at someone with binoculars through their bedroom window, you just think, Jesus. I mean, obviously, this is a funny concept that you're finding out that your dad is actually like this horrible person, this peeping Tom. But it's like even then, it's just like, oh mate, this is rough.
It's definitely a different time when that was just something you could laugh off.
Yeah, no, yeah, totally.
Well, same with Libyan terrorists being just like a fun moment in a little comedy movie.
Oh yeah.
You just whack out a bazooka out of nowhere. Yeah, that's fine. That is fine. That one.
And I guess Libya has gone even darker now. You definitely couldn't get away with that these days. So.
Wap babaloo babba wap baboo doody booty oh booty doody booty oh booty doody booty oh booty doody booty oh booty woo doody booty oh booty wap babaloo babba wap baboo got a gal named Sue. She knows just what to do. Got a gal named Sue. She knows just what to do. She rock it to the east, she rock it to the west.
So this isn't like a big effects movie, but they do have some very cool like sci-fi shots. But basically, any time the time machine's doing something, it looks amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how they took all the production is definitely an effect with the past. In the second movie, they do have to make it an effect with all the continuity. I guess that's why it's fun to watch there. But here, it's just well done production, a couple flashes, because just a couple bolts of lightning that make up the effects in this one, basically.
Well, and the flaming marks when the time machine goes through time.
I was basically
such a cool
I was
effect.
counting that with bolts of lightning, to be honest. But yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That iconic image of Doc and Marty standing next to each other with their legs sort of like shoulder width apart, with a flame running between them, is just the imagery is just so cool. Like, it is too cool.
It's bugged me since the mid-'80s. Probably when I first saw on VHS that they didn't quite composite it right in. I think it's Marty's foot is actually somewhat in the fire, but...
Yeah, but he's too cool. It wouldn't actually set a light. He'd get away with that one.
Yeah.
I think cool is just the word for this film, because like the DeLorean's cool. Marty basically invented skater culture.
Marty's not that cool, though, when you get down to it.
Oh, you're having a laugh, aren't you? He skates along and then grabs hold of someone's car to make him go faster. What's not cool? But that's about as cool as it gets, isn't it?
Sorry,
Well, in the 90s
He's got
anyway.
a girlfriend like a million miles out of his league. He plays in a rock
It's
band.
true.
He's about as cool as it gets, man.
Okay, sorry. I played in bands and had girls chase me in high school, and I thought I wasn't cool. I might be extrapolating.
And yeah, sure, I went back in time a little bit and then forward in time. Sure, I did all that, but is that really cool? Is that what you're saying?
Watching it around this time, I think I was like, oh, this is the first time I watched the movie since I've actually seen several seasons of Rick and Morty. I might be layering a bit of Morty onto Marty now.
That's possibly it. No, I mean, he was cool, and that's what made it so weird that he wasn't like the most popular person in the town. But yeah, I mean, even when he gets into fights and stuff, the only character flaw he's got throughout the whole 3 films really is that he doesn't like being called a chicken. That's it. That really is the only sort of the thing that his
Even
character
that
needs to get
doesn't
over.
really come up so much in the first one, does it? They
No,
sort
it
of
doesn't,
shoehorn that in the second one.
Yeah, that's been brought up in the second one. I mean, there are moments. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is a moment where he gets called a chicken in the first, is there?
Like, it's still, like, he still, like, picks fights and doesn't back down, but they're not so explicit about it.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, obviously that was what they wanted to say. That's what the whole third film's about, really, isn't it? But it's this one that's not really played too much. So, in fact, actually, in the first film, he had no character flaws. He was just he was the greatest
Golden
character.
child.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the one thing that keeps me wondering is why is his best friend a scientist 50 years older than him?
I saw a good quote from Zemeckis on that, actually, where he's saying that relationship didn't work until they threw in the guitar amp at the start. And then with that scene, you're just like, yeah, I kind of get it.
I was going to say Marty's other character flaws, he has poor taste in guitars until he gets a Gibson thrown in his hand in the 50s. But that's music geeking.
The thing is, right, if it was that, just the fact that he wanted to use cool guitar equipment that was around his house, which I've heard as well, that's the reason why he was there, because he wanted to play on that big speaker, which I don't really buy, because you could see when they're together at the start of the film, you could tell that they've got a better relationship than just that. They both care about each other way more. I think he's, who cares really how they met? I don't really want to know. I don't really care. They just seem like really good mates. But maybe Marty's just really interested in all the little inventions he was coming out with.
Maybe that's where Eric Stoltz would have been different. I'm just here for the amplifier.
Yeah.
I think one of those things, if you look at the script on paper, it doesn't make sense. But when you just have those two performances, there's just so much warmth and humor and friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you say, it doesn't matter how they met. You can just tell they're good friends.
Yeah. It's so good. Every time they hug in these movies, it feels so good. It really does. When they see each other and they grab hold of each other and give each other a little friendly hug, it's just like, you're like, yeah.
Broke Back to the Future.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the chemistry between those two characters is absolutely spot on.
One of my favourite moments is in the third one when they swap catchphrases.
Oh, what bit is that?
I was about to say, now you got to deliver.
It's right when they find out that Marty's going to die instead of Doc. And then Marty's like, "Great Scott!" And the Doc goes, "Oh, this is heavy."
I love it. That actually is an interesting point with this film, which really, I mean, if this was to come out nowadays, I don't know if people will put up with it, but it repeats itself a hell of a lot. Like, there are scenes that are just done again in the next films. Obviously, it doesn't, affect the film we're talking about now, but, the whole waking up in your mum's bedroom, that's done 3 times. That one film 3 times with the same sort of joke.
Yeah, and the same chase that ends in the manure is in all 3.
Yeah. There's loads of that stuff. It's crazy, but I think because of the level that these films are pitched, that's the one thing that sort of ties them all together. That sort of adventure, slightly, I would call them comedies. because they're at that level, they totally get away with that stuff. It totally works.
Well, it's like Reality Stranger. It's like, Doc, I'm from the future. Donald Trump's the president. Everyone stays in their house, and there are no sporting events. That's like 5 times past anything Marty has to say.
It's true. All he does is get his hoverboard out and float about a bit. He doesn't know about the real future, does he? Doesn't know about it. But no, I mean, yeah, the repeating stuff is actually pretty funny in this. To be fair, they totally get away with it.
It's like a pop song, right?
Yeah, like,
you have your refrain.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Oh god, that quote just sticks in my head now. Some films do not get away with it.
No, I mean, well, yeah, in 2 and 3, a lot of what you see would now have people on the internet screaming out about it being like fan service, but it works.
Well, yeah, the Avengers had to wait 10 years before they could do a film where they go back to their old films.
Right, see, I haven't seen any of those films, so I don't get that.
Right. Endgame basically is just Back to the Future 2. They go back and visit all the old ones.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
I intentionally didn't mention Infinity War and Endgame were mentioned were filmed back to back earlier, so to avoid bringing up Endgame, because we bring up Endgame in 70% of our podcasts.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can argue this film is basically a comedy. Like, there's some great lines in there. There's a guy getting covered in manure every movie.
That is pretty good. It's pretty good.
That's wonderful. And
it's kind of... This level of film doesn't really exist anymore. Just sort of the fun, rollicking adventure.
I don't know. I think they do occasionally. I'd say the closest we're getting, I don't know, it's like of an old film, but the new Jumanji films, I think, are of that style.
That's a good shout, actually, yeah.
They have that sort of adventure, comedy, mild peril stuff going on, and it works really well. We don't have enough of them, I don't think. Family films now tend to be these animated things, 3D animation with big song numbers and all that sort of stuff. They've sort of taken over. But yeah, we're lacking that sort of, half comedy, half adventure film genre that was so popular back then, which is a shame, I think.
The 80s is the period where there weren't the Disney films, right?
Disney was pretty much on the downbeat because they hadn't learned live action yet and pissed everyone off with the Black Cauldron, which isn't bad, it's just intense.
In the 90s, we did have the resurgence of the cartoons, and then nowadays it's all the CG ones. But yeah, I guess in the 80s there was just that gap in the market for this kind of live-action family film.
Yeah, I saw a few years ago the Mr. Peabody and oh god, I forgot the other one's name. Anyway, it was a CGI thing which didn't get seen much, but time travel wackiness, and I actually enjoyed it quite well. But maybe that kind of gets this vibe. But again, that one has so much insane effects where we've already noted that this one is very pared down effects. I mean, there's almost nothing.
But it does do a convincing job of giving you like says a guy who's never seen the 1950s, but of creating like the old-timey town and then showing you the modern version. Like, it's not in-your-face science fiction effects, but it is impressive production.
And what's crazy is the short amount of time that we see in 85, they give you so much that you can link to the moment he goes back to when he goes to the past. You already know about the clock tower being hit, and then you see that clock tower and that comes into it. There's just like loads of bits and pieces that strip thread throughout that intro of that film that suddenly you're linking to the like the moment you go back, you feel like you know the town by the time you see it in the past. It's crazy how well it does that.
It's a really tight film. It only shows you like exactly as much as you need to see of everything.
I was about to say, it's like one of those modern like puzzle boxes, except without all the like annoying lingering mysteries. But the construction
everything's
has that
answered.
detail. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just look at the opening scene. I mean, it only shows you what you need to know, but it shows you loads of it. Like that opening scene where it's just going past the clocks and the TV's on and all that sort of stuff. and a few newspaper clippings or whatever. You're
Yeah,
like,
that one long cut.
yeah, it just chucks stuff at you. And you're like, wow, this is when you look at it again, especially on a second viewing or third viewing or 50th viewing, you go, oh my God, yeah, that relates to that. And this is this. And the skateboard hits the plutonium box under the bed. And, it's really intense with how much information it chucks at you within that opening section.
I don't know if they were intentionally going for this, but the king of that has always been, I think, Hitchcock's Rear Window kind of does the same thing quite well. So I wonder if they were sort of referencing that with newspaper clippings and just things around the house. But it's just the whole show don't tell thing, right?
And it's got such a feeling when this film starts of like, yeah, this is a big movie. It's got that really long shot, all the close-ups, the music very slowly comes in. You don't see Marty's face for a little while, and it just gets you hyped. You're like, oh yeah, I'm in for a treat.
And it's the comedy.
Somehow they
as
knew
well.
this was going to be a big film.
It hits you with the comedy as well, with the whole, this massive machine that's set up, obviously, to do all of Doc's chores by the time that the alarms stop ringing, and it's just dropping. Oh no, the alarms go off later, don't they? One sets off the machine, and it turns the telly on and all that sort of stuff. And it's dropping the food just onto the floor and everything going wrong because it hasn't been maintained for a couple of days or whatever. So it's got those funny moments in there straight away. So you totally get the tone of the film. While that opening, the opening few shots of this are just incredible. Really, great bit of filmmaking.
And that's why I don't know why Zemeckis' name isn't bigger. He just made even I think I slammed Forrest Gump a week or two on this podcast, but it's still a well-made film. It's just
I don't know how you can slam that. For every time I see that film is on the telly or whatever, I'll just go, I'll watch 5 minutes of this, and I'm always there to the end. I don't know why I love that film so much. I just do.
I had the same thing because it's always on TV in the UK. But when I was a kid, because it was always on so late, I'd only be able to watch the first hour or 2 hours and have to go to bed. So I always used to think Forrest Gump was just a Vietnam film. I didn't know there's still like half a movie after that.
The point being that all of Zemeckis' films are very watchable. This one being at the top of the heap, of course. But let's get into a few of those like darker themes, yeah?
Okay. I assume you're starting a new segment. Alright, I've got a perfect opening for this segment, and I apologise.
Got my mojo working, they won't work on you. Got my mojo working, they won't
Okay.
work on you.
Matt, Dave, when she was like late teens, early 20s,
No.
how hot was your mum?
No. No, thank you. That's not. It's weird, isn't it? It's like when you were reading the plot out at the start, I was like, oh my God, yeah, this is horrible. What is going on here? But yeah, I mean, it don't feel too bad at the time, does it? It's odd.
No, sorry. There was one quote. I just need to backtrack a bit on my own little rabbit hole here and read it out. Here we go. Zemeckis and Gale, one of the producers, found it difficult to create a believable friendship between Marty and Brown before they created Giant Guitar Amplifier, of course, and only resolved Marty's Oedipal relationship with his mother when they wrote the line, "It's like I'm kissing my brother."
Yeah, that helps. It helps slightly.
I think it works because they never really film her like she's sexy and we're meant to find her attractive. They always play it off as a joke.
Exactly.
They do. Yeah, you're
If
absolutely right.
Like you mentioned how one of the studios turned the film down because it wasn't sexy enough. Imagine how fucked up it would be if they did shoot that as sexy.
yeah. And she's played so innocently as well, isn't she? She's she's more sort of swiping her hair and going, "Oh, what a dreamboat," rather than taking those lines too far. So
well, that's it.
That's how it works.
If they made Back to the Future now, then the past he visits would be like the 80s, right? And then I think it would come across really creepy.
That's what.
But because it's like a 1950s version of High School Romance, it's just so sweet and chaste that you can't really get too upset with it.
That's basically what Hot Tub Time Machine did. If you guys haven't seen that, they take that particular thread and get really wrong with it.
Yeah, no, I've seen it.
Right.
I did like it. But yeah, no, I mean, what they do here is they just get away with it, don't they? God, the amount of discussions they must have had about that while putting the film together, it must have got. Look, is this too messed up, or are we keeping the right side of things here? But yeah, they just get away with it, I think.
But apparently, the premise they originally started from was, if I went back in time, would I be friends with my dad?
Yeah, that's right.
But really, the part you remember is him and the mum.
Yeah, because he never really. It's strange. There's times where they do seem like friends, but it's never really. It's only for Marty to get back, to fix the future. He's never.
Yeah, it feels like he's forcing himself to be his dad's mate.
Yeah, they never have a connection.
No, it's like in high school. I was in like the gifted program, so we had some real geeks around, right? Like very socially awkward dudes, and I knew these were the guys that got bullied, so I tried to be nice with them and have conversations with them sometimes, but they were never people I actually like legit became friends with, right?
Yeah, I was exactly the same because I was a geek. You feel compelled to be friends with the other geeks, but some of them you're like, "Oh, mate, you're not doing yourself any favors. I know why you get bullied."
But I'm not going to be the one to do it. Was at least my stance. So.
Right, yeah. Whereas with Marty and Lorraine, you do really feel like they could be good friends.
Or more.
Oh yeah, absolutely, totally. Yeah, if only she wasn't his mum.
Also, if only she wasn't such a horn dog.
Yeah, that's knowledge that none of us want to have, I guess.
No.
Who knows what hijinks your folks are up to? I don't know. At least my dad has a
all right,
story.
we're done now. All right, well, thanks for having me on. I can't put up with this anymore.
Well, you mentioned earlier, like, the sort of the dark things and the things that you ignore because it's a comedy. But the fact that George didn't notice that their son looks suspiciously like the guy that his wife fancied in high school.
Yeah, he probably should have left out the 8-year-old burning the living room line.
Yeah, there's that, and I mean that happens later on as well, isn't it? With the amount of characters that look exactly like, they do in a different timeline or whatever. It's
When Marty plays his own daughter in the second one.
Yeah, I was about to say everyone in Hill Valley looks the same. It might be kind of an inbred town to start with.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. But no, I think the fact that that's another one of those plot holes that you have to kind of overlook, isn't it? The fact that hold on, they're not going to sit down at one point and go, "You look exactly like that guy." That's weird. They don't they don't need to mention that, really, do they?
Oh, we didn't really mention her when we were doing the actors, but the girl who plays Jennifer's okay. And then they replace her in the second and third one with a much worse actress.
I don't know why they. I'm not quite sure why they changed it up. I don't know the history on that, but
I assume it was just a scheduling thing because it was a minor enough role. They didn't think anyone would care.
The person they replaced her with was Elizabeth Shue, by the way.
Okay,
Who?
But she just the one in 2 and 3. She just plays it like such a kids TV show over the top way. Whereas Jennifer here is very believable.
No, you're not wrong. I'm just saying that the replacement actually became a much more successful actor in the end.
Huh. Although the one bit that's not believable is that she lets Marty get away with constantly staring at other women.
In fact,
there's a scene at the start of this, isn't it, where he checks out another girl. She just moves his chin. My wife would have broken my chin had that have been the case. Lucky guy.
I just had to check. Elizabeth Shue plays her in the later movies, just to tie in with our crazy Nick Cage a few weeks ago, starred alongside him in Leaving Las Vegas, which won Oscars and stuff. So if she wasn't that great in Back to the Future, she did get some nice roles later on down the line. Whereas Claudia Wilson is the actress in this movie, and Claudia Wells, who hasn't been in anything. Okay, just interesting.
Wonder what happened to her then.
She was apparently in Back to the 2015 Future, a short film, which I'm guessing is probably fan-made.
Okay.
But yeah, she made Back to the Future, and whoa, she didn't make any films from 1985 to 2008. Yeah, she just didn't work for almost 30 years, and then started working. TV and films, wild. Okay.
But she was only in like a couple of scenes in this one, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it might be that she's actually a terrible actress and she just got away with it because she didn't have to do much in this film.
The other really dark thing that, again, it only shows up cartoonishly is, how did Doc get that plutonium?
Well, I think what they say is the Libyans stole the plutonium and gave it to him to make a bomb.
I'm just saying, what kind of weird geopolitical connections does that dude have? Doc has a lot of secrets.
Yeah,
I mean, these days they'd say, oh yeah, I went on the dark web. But how do you get in touch with Libyan terrorists in 1985?
Just met him down the shops one day. She went, you alright?
He was at Plutonium R.Us.
There's a sketch of, it's a Steve Martin comedy special. I think I tried to show Luke a clip, but I couldn't find it. But it has Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, dressed up in sort of a terrorist and going into like a convenience store and, hey, do you have any plutonium? Oh no, or no, where's the plutonium? It's right over there. Oh, do you have a license? Oh no, sorry. Can you get us those cigarettes? And then it has them going over like shoving all the plutonium like in their coats and stuff and running out. So. Buying plutonium at the convenience store in 1985. You can see that in a comedy special if you want.
Well, that's one of the jokes in this. Doc says, oh, well, maybe in 1985 you can just buy plutonium at the local store, but here in the 50s.
No, I'm just recommending the thing where you can watch Pee Wee Herman trying to do so. Yeah, that was basically my only thought on the plutonium, by the way.
Yeah. Well, one thing I noticed, which I really enjoyed when I was reading about this film Wikipedia, apparently Ronald Reagan was a big fan.
He got name-checked, of course.
Surely everyone in the world was.
Yeah, but apparently he was watching the screening, and when they made the joke about him being president, he demanded they roll back the reel and play it again.
Imagine the ego. I like to think that wasn't a special screening either. He was just in a cinema.
He's just in the theatre.
Yeah, and he was just like, no, stop, everyone lights up. Just let you know, yeah, I am the president. I am here watching it with you, but we're just going to rewind and see my little mention there again, okay? Anyone got a problem with that?
I think he was SAG president for a while, too. He can get away with that.
Well, again, if they made this film again today, they could make the same joke, but it would just comes across a bit darker when you make that joke about Trump. Yeah. Although I could definitely imagine Trump doing exactly that.
Turn it back. Fabulous, fabulous. I can't do a Trump impression.
Inject the plutonium, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I heard that plutonium kills viruses, so if you eat it...
Any more darkness in before the light? We'll get to the light in the last segment.
I guess the only other dark thing is, like, Biff as, like, the high school bully, sure, that's been done. But by the end of this film, he's, like, pretty legitimately trying to commit sexual assault.
Yeah, he's not just the bully. I mean, he's basically trying to murder Marty, too, so whatever.
Well, yeah. He goes after him with, like... Does he go after him with, like, a crowbar or a wrench or something?
With a car.
Oh, yeah, he tries to run over his car.
I mean, I'm not trying to downplay sexual assault. That's a horrible thing. But, running someone over with your car, it's on an even keel because you're murdering them.
I guess it's because, like, it's set in, like, the 50s, and I guess at that time, the attitude that, like, oh, I've decided you're my woman, so you're gonna be, kind of was how a guy like that would have thought at that time.
I mean, I don't know anything about, the history of that stuff in America at that time, but I do know that that was quite a common trope in American cinema at the time, right? That there'd always be overbearing male characters that used to treat women like objects like that, you know.
Well, and not even always as the villain. Like, that would be the hero in a lot of these films in like the 50s and 40s. Well, that's what like Han Solo's based on, right?
Yeah, Space Ranger just grabs the gal by the... No, okay, let's not quote anyone else. But yeah, the overbearing space hero. I know we see that. I mean, that's kind of... They're playing into those tropes a little bit here, with the DeLorean appearing as a UFO and the hazmat suit just being fantastic.
Yeah, so I think, if anything, that might be a reference to cinema at that time, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving it too much credit. But yeah, I mean, it's dark as fuck, that.
But it's just very believable that is how Biff would think.
Yeah, I mean, he's a complete scumbag. Like, everything.
But like in his head, he's not doing anything wrong, right? It's just like, well, I want this woman, I'm going to get her.
Yeah. You will be mine. Attitude. It's
How does the bullying aspect work? I know in Japan it's become a big issue where kids go home and end it all because they got bullied at school, or people getting bullied on the internet. I mean, can we actually laugh at like a bully anymore?
Can we laugh at a bully? I mean, it depends how it's played, and I think it's important to remember that this is a sort of a light-hearted, adventure comedy film, and the bully is never given any sort of gravitas, and in pretty much every scene he's in, Biff comes across as worse off. In fact, that's the rare bit where you think, I mean, obviously he does come off worse at the end of that, but it's the first time where he's not being played for laughs as being an idiot and being the butt of the joke during that scene. That's when he turns into an actual villain and not sort of a figure of fun. I think, other than the opening scene where he's being nasty to George McFly.
The laughs don't really come from his bullying. They come from him like getting comeuppance or being made to look stupid.
Yeah, and he gets his various different comeuppance throughout the film, doesn't he? The manure scenes, the being punched out scenes, he gets a lot of comeuppance throughout these films. And even the basic lines that he's got that he gets wrong is sort of a look how much of an idiot this bloke is.
It speaks to how good a villain he is that he's constantly losing throughout this film, but he still feels intimidating.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he becomes much more of a villain in the sequels, right? So here,
for sure, but I mean, here he is still pretty horrendous.
Okay, enough of the darkness. This is a light movie. Let's get back to the light.
So this film has got quite a big legacy. Like, this is a really beloved film.
Yeah, you don't ask if this film holds up. This is like the standard you use to see if other films hold up.
There's so many elements that play into that. There's, there are the characters that you love. They're still as good today as they were back then. But I think, a huge part of that is the score. Everything from the sort of the music we know, like the sort of pop songs and the rock that's laced throughout, to that main theme tune that will still put the hairs up on the back of my neck whenever I hear it. And it's fascinating, that main theme tune, because you do not associate it with a time travel film. It sounds like something more from a space adventure or a swashbuckle, pirate film or something. That amazing score is it's incredibly exciting, and you would never put it to this film. But once you've made that connection, you just cannot separate it. The moment you hear two notes from that, you're seeing the film flash before your eyes. It's unbelievable, really.
What has the 50s film soundtracking approach that Star Wars also used? So,
yeah, for sure.
I guess my question, what is actually the better effect? Star Wars being a big, massive production with a big, massive theme, or this one actually being quite a small production when you get down to it, not counting all the 50s stuff, but a much smaller scale film also is just a massive theme. Is it more effective here?
Well, what's great is they don't overuse it. Like when we talked about Star Wars, we were talking about how there's not a second of those films that you're not being blasted with music. Whereas here, it's just at those moments of high adventure, the theme sort of swells up.
And it's impossible for me to answer that question because I'd watched the Star Wars films in my 30s, and I've been watching Back to the Future since I was like 6. So it always will be Back to the Future for me because it's the nostalgia that goes with it. But I haven't got that with Star Wars, so I think even for people that do have the nostalgia for both trilogies, it's got to be impossible to compare it at this point, isn't it? Like, what works better?
I think part of what makes Back to the Future work so well is that we just got those 3 films. Whereas Star Wars, we've had so much Star Wars, you take it for granted.
We got the Universal Studios ride, man, and I wrote it.
Well, I guess we got the cartoon as well in the 90s.
I hadn't seen that, but I did. The ride was funny. It was one of the first, like, sort of simulator, the giant screen, and you're sitting in a DeLorean, right? But they had actually, Christopher Lloyd and Thomas Wilson do show up in their roles in that ride. And I don't think Michael J. Fox in there, but they did get those 2 guys. It was fun. You can actually watch it online. I'm weird. I like to watch ride-throughs on YouTube, so... But I did know that was one of the first. At the time, that was supposed to be like the top of the line high tech ride when it came out in the early '90s. So
this film has a lot of fans. So one of my ex-girlfriends, she had a cousin who had a full-on DeLorean kitted up to look like the Time Machine. Like, isn't it strange? The DeLorean, it existed, but now it is just the Back to the Future car.
Well, the car was shit, wasn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good motor to drive.
It was just a fucking nightmare. So because it didn't become this big sort of iconic car, the only thing you can reference it to is the film, isn't it?
But they do look cool.
They do look cool. They look insanely cool. I wonder if they'd still look cool if they weren't associated to the film, though. I don't
know, like those Sci-Fi doors and everything. They're pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean it's spot on. But because was that a product placement deal? It must have been, right?
I think by this point it was not. I think they were just like, no one likes this. It's cheap and it looks cool, so let's do it.
Really? There's a line right at the start of the film where Doc says something like, they said, why would you do it out of a DeLorean? And he says, well, the carbon body is perfect for this, and this. And then he starts kind of like, and if you're going to do anything, you do it in style. And then he holds his hands out, points towards the car, and there's a shot of the DeLorean. And it's kind of like, okay, right, this is an advert at this point.
Here we go. I'm just reading this off Wiki, but the DeLorean Motor Company was an American automobile manufacturer formed by automobile industry executive John DeLorean in 1975. It is remembered for the one model it produced, the stainless steel DeLorean sports car featuring gull-wing doors, and for its brief and turbulent history, ending in receivership and bankruptcy in 1982. In October 1982, John DeLorean was videotaped in a sting operation agreeing to bankroll drug trafficking, but was acquitted on the basis of entrapment.
And then that was 82?
Yeah, so DeLoreans are not a thing by 85.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, okay. I bet they didn't even have to pay to use it then.
No. They just had one.
That's wild.
So that's.
But of course, now we all remember the DeLorean for Ready Player One, right?
Oh right, yeah, because that's the only real DeLorean.
No, yeah, me and Matt hate that film. Don't worry.
No, Luke rage screams about it for about an hour.
I know. I was listening. What episode was I listening to? The other day. I think it was actually the Ready Player one. Oh no, it wasn't. It couldn't have been because it was another one. I was thinking, I'll listen to. I think it might have been the Matrix one, and it opens with you ranting about Ready Player One, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, that film really got up my back a bit.
Yeah, I had to cut him off on that one. I had to stage an intervention. But no one hates this. Is there anyone that doesn't like Back to the Future?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure I mean, this is planet Earth. There's bound to people out there that hate something.
The one thing that I've heard people complain about is there's the gag at the end when Marty's playing Johnny Be Good, and the guy phones up his cousin Marvin Gaye, and he's like,
You know that new sound you've been looking for?
and people are like, oh yeah, they're trying to say that this white man actually invented rock and roll, not the black guy. But I think that's really reaching for something to be offended by that.
I think that's a little joke, isn't it? I think that's
I'm just thinking it's a Chuck Berry fan. I mean, you had Jump Blues and Muddy Waters and stuff like that before. Some people call Rocket 88 from 1952, I think, or 1951, the first rock and roll song. So it's a gray area anyway, but yeah, Chuck Berry was awesome, so I want to give Chuck his due. It doesn't ruin the movie for me at all, but yeah.
No. Yeah, I like Dave said, it's just a little gag. I don't think they meant anything by it. And
it's just funny because you don't notice that the kick drum says Marvin, Barry, and the Starlighters until he calls Chuck, right? And you're, oh, Barry, got it. So, he set it up well.
Yeah, there's I think we were less sensitive to stuff back then, obviously. So if that film was being made now, maybe you would go, that's a bit interesting, but I can't imagine that there was any malicious fault put into that little gag there.
Whoever probably first brought that up was probably just joking.
Oh, and just one more note, as a guitarist, Michael J. Fox is, I don't think you're hearing him on the soundtrack, but he is actually playing the thing properly, so that's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think he actually did play guitar in high school.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you guys.
They also coached him to make sure that he looked right playing these songs as well.
Yeah, we like to do musical moments. I would love to rock out that riff, but it's still 7:30 in the morning here, so.
Yeah, it might not go down well with the neighbours.
Yeah, well, with the fam, to be honest. But I know I always ask my wife, "Can I play Johnny Be Good?" She's like, "Not that early." Okay. But I'll be sticking 50s rock and roll songs in between our segments anyway, so, and some blues. The big moment, I guess, is coming up. Any major points anyone wants to make about the legacy or just weird things you forgot about Back to the Future?
No, I think it is interesting that people have so much nostalgia for this film as an 80s film, when the film itself was kind of a nostalgia film for the 50s.
Yeah, I did find it funny watching this and just recognizing so many products that packaging, and that I remembered from being a young child. So, and since I haven't watched the film for a while, it stuck out this time.
So I think 30 years from now, there's going to be a generation of kids who are nostalgic about stuff like, Transformers and Stranger Things from today, which is nostalgic for the 80s, which was nostalgic for the 50s. It just goes on forever.
All the way back to Babylon.
But yeah, I think we're pretty much wrapping up here. And like you said, it's not even a question, does this film hold up today?
It's the standard.
Yeah, it's one of the all-time classics. This is just the perfect family blockbuster.
It really is. It really is. You sit there with a grin on your face from start to finish. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's so well done. And the tone of it throughout is like, as I said, as we've mentioned many times, they get away with a lot, but it's it's perfectly done. I love this film.
Okay. Anyway, I actually got just a knock on the door. Now it's time. So, Dave, can you tell us where to find you on the interwebs and the world of podcasting?
You can find me on twitter.com I'm at David Turner's on there. We do a weekly video game show called The Computer Game Show. So for all the information, go to thecomputergameshow.com. And if you're into sci-fi and you want to hear a man experience every Star Wars film for the first time, then search Star Calls on your podcast players, and you can listen to those. I watch the films and then ring my Star Wars loving friend and tell him what I think of them. Yes, including the prequels. So now I'm a massive Star Wars nerd. That came out of nowhere.
And yeah, we have actually got James lined up to do a Star Trek episode in the not too distant future.
He will be fantastic, because as much as James loves Star Wars, it's nothing compared to how much he loves Star Trek. So yeah, it'll be a good guess.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
He'll be in the den for that.
I can 100% recommend. The reason we got David on today is because I'm a huge fan of all of his podcasts. So
cheers, mate.
Definitely check those out if you haven't already.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming on with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Cheers for joining
It's been
us.
great talking about this film. It's great.
Oh yeah, I was so excited to podcast with you. Like I said, I've been listening for a long time.
Cheers, man.
Very quickly bash through our socials. If you like the podcast, you can find us on Twitter at MLSFSPod. Please do rate and review, go on iTunes, all of that bollocks. If you want to hear more of my voice for some reason, I do a Pokemon podcast. You can find that on Twitter
Luke
at
loves
LukeLovesPKMN.
PKMN.
Oh, you
Sorry.
remembered. Good boy. And if you've enjoyed the music you've heard during this podcast, you can find more of Matt's music by going to rovingsagemedia.bandcamp.com.
Luke, did
Sorry,
you
that
come
was super patronizing. Sorry, Matt.
Did you come up with your new farewell for the audience? You said you're doing a new farewell.
Yeah, so the listeners at home and Dave, please make like a tree and leave. Oh, bollocks!
Right.
I was going to do the wrong one from the film and I did it right!
Get out of here!
Leave that in exactly like that, because that is the perfect ending.
I fucked up fucking it up.
That's amazing.
That's what happens when you record at 6 a.m. on 4 hours sleep and a can of Monster.
Next